Hello, my name is Tyler Burks. This is our group project on the Allen Family Student Center.
Laterno University. Proud and austere she stands, a beacon of light. That as the bell tolls out, something brews under the surface. A hunger rising. The students are looking for food. But to where do they turn? How do they satisfy this desire? The AFSC building stands in the centerpiece of the campus, housing food option. We turn to Rachel, one of the primary Laternologists, to find out what exactly it holds in store.
Hi, my name is Rachel Paul, and today I'm going to focus on the Student Center, more commonly known as the ASC by the students here at Laterno. The Student Center has a lot of seating available in the lower area where people will congregate and talk about things or study and do homework. There's also the Hive, where people will get food for lunch, dinner, sometimes breakfast, and there's also seating there. The ASC also has the mailroom and the storeroom, which are kind of the same area where students will either get books or merchandise. It has a lot of functions. As you walk around the ASC, you'll see a bunch of papers on the wall and in bathrooms, stalls. These papers just announce events that are happening on campus that students can get involved in.
To discover more about this fascinating subject, we interviewed people who go through the commons.
Hi, I'm Amaya, and I'm here with Aiden to talk about the culture in ASC. Aiden, what's your major?
I'm a nursing major.
And what class are you?
I'm class of 29.
So she's a freshman. Okay, so how would you describe the overall culture here at ASC in 3 words?
I would describe it as quiet, focused, and also competitive.
Okay, and how do you or your friends or whoever you're here with spend time, like your time?
When I'm here in the ASC, I usually am at a booth, either studying or talking with my friends. Usually when I'm here, I'm doing a bunch of schoolwork, I'm studying, I'm completing assignments, and then I'm also here to do schoolwork if I'm really trying to study.
And what challenges do you think people face here most often?
I would say just trying to find a spot, because I've noticed some people don't like sitting next to people they don't know. So trying to find a spot where you can sit down and actually study when you're not next to somebody is kind of hard, especially when the study rooms are all taken.
Okay, last thing. If there was one thing you could change about ASC, anything, what would it be?
Having more study rooms, because the 5 that we have is not enough sometimes, especially when 3 hours are taken when you want to study.
Thank you, Aiden.
Thank you guys.
I'm Rachel, and I'm here in the ASC with Micah and Felice, and we're just here to talk about culture in the ASC. Can you each tell me your major and your class?
I'm a freshman in information systems.
I'm a sophomore psychology major.
Micah, what would you describe the ASC culture in 3 words as?
I would say it's a quiet, focused space where people can get together and just community.
Felice, how would you spend time together here outside of formal activities?
I would do homework or just come here to, I go to work here, so I don't know, do homework.
Okay, and Micah, what challenges have you seen here that you face the most?
Well, not just like loudness wise, but I can't really study here because there's a lot of people in here and I get distracted easily.
And Felice, what would you change if you could about this environment?
I would add more comfortable couches or just like bigger tables because I don't really like the small round tables.
Okay.
Thank you. One of our most fascinating conclusions was that men would usually not start conversations with women. In fact, they usually waited until the woman had started the conversation to engage. Let's watch and see what Jordan will do next. Will he be a man, or will he be like a frightened puppy and scurry off? This is Jordan Coe, one of the world's other leading laternologists. He has spent his entire adult life studying this fascinating species we call the laterno student. He has some interesting insights for us.
Greetings. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at the ASC lobby. The ASC lobby, or common section, is right around this corner. So over here we have a section of a few tables, which is usually only populated by like one group each, usually ranging from anywhere from 2 to 4 people. I've noticed that students here typically tend to be eating and studying, especially during the lunch period. Over here, we have another set of long tables. The couch sections, located both here and there, tend to be populated by one group each. Sometimes people take naps here when they're sleepy. Here, we have the S-shaped couch. Despite its large size, it is often only occupied by a few people. Here, we have the round tables. Again, despite its large size, it is usually only occupied by a small number of people. Generally, the people seated at these tables tend to keep to themselves. Here, we have the couches.
You already showed me the couches.
While doing my observations in the Allen Family Student Center, one of the first things that I probably noticed right off the top of my head was that you saw a lot of people hanging out in the tables that were right in front of the hive. These tables, usually the groups were anywhere from 2 to 4 people. If it was pairs, then usually they were couples, is what my observation was. But if it was big groups, they tended to only have one female. Occasionally you would see 2, but for the most part, the groups were male dominated, and the vast majority of people who I noticed were male. Another thing that I noticed was that the S-shaped couch, and I mentioned this in the tour of the student center, was that often this, despite this table size, it very often had like only 1 or 2 people on it. The student center was often very loud, such to the point that, and I wasn't surprised when I saw this, was that most people who I saw who were alone in the student center tended to be wearing earbuds. The majority of people, if you saw them in the student center, they were either working on homework or they were socializing with friends that they were with. I saw a couple of people who appeared to just not be doing work and just be relaxing when they were on their own. I saw someone playing Minecraft in the student center. But overall, the general atmosphere that I got was very either busy or social. You would see a couple of people who would sometimes come up to sitting tables and just stand there and talk to people who they knew at the tables, but this wasn't super often. One of the things that was also noticed in our observation was that the couches that are nearby the windows, you typically saw a lot of athletes on those couches, and the tables that were closest to the hive tended to be the ones in the lunch hour that clumped up the fastest. There's a long rectangular table near the foot of the staircase that leads up to the second floor, and generally I noticed that whoever was sitting at these tables all tended to be pretty connected and they knew each other pretty well. I noticed that probably you would see a lot of people, if they didn't have anyone with them, as I mentioned earlier, they usually would have earbuds in. Often you wouldn't see just a ton of people come up and talk to them, like I mentioned earlier. But when they did, they would often just stand there when they talked to them. They wouldn't sit down with them and join them. I thought that that was kind of interesting. There was almost this sort of recognition that someone, if they were busy, that they didn't need any more than a few minutes distraction. You would sometimes see professors come in and out of the general area, but they typically, from what I saw, wouldn't associate as much with the students or just mingle with them. Usually it was students mingling with other students. There was a small group of people who sit in the round table, but usually, despite the large round table size, there's only I would say I only ever saw at max 4 people there, and they were almost always on computers. But we only observed one instance, at least in my observations, where there was only one person at the large round table. If people were solo, they usually were at the tables and chairs that were kind of in the middle of the common room. I would be interested to see if maybe this had something to do with them wanting to be seen or wanting to be noticed. For just ASC's function in general, one of the things that we discussed as a group when putting this together was ASC kind of had several zones or areas and functions. You would sort of see this, and I hate to describe it as a melting pot, but that really was what it was. In addition to it being that, part of the reason why you would see so many people who would walk by and talk to people who were sitting there was that ASC is kind of a shortcut through the campus. It's a covered area. A lot of people, even if they're not going to be staying in ASC, they will walk through ASC, sometimes through the common area, to just get to wherever they're needing to go, especially if they're crossing from Longview and Heath Hardwick to get to Glasgow or Solheim. Sometimes even with Saga, they'll swing through, even if it's not directly in the way. I was able to engage in discussion with several students there. One of the things that we also noticed is that typically people did associate with a specific group or people who were related to their major or friend group. We saw a lot of, just whenever ASC would get busy, there would be pretty much constant movement. You would always have at least some people who were just moving through, cycling through. It was almost a rotating sort of situation where sometimes if a table was abandoned shortly thereafter, it would get picked up by another group.
Now, really, this study was only confined to the lunch period on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So really, we're only getting part of the picture about the much grander scheme of behavior in the Student Center. So for instance, behavior at breakfast or at dinner time would be different than it was when we observed it. So we need to remember that also the Student Center is more than just sort of a physical space. It's also a cultural hub where the people from all the different dorms of different majors come together and talk about things. However, our research, as I stated, is still incomplete. In fact, we left out the top floor of the Student Center and the outside, and really then you're only getting part of the picture, because on the top floor you have the study rooms, you have the student life offices, the gaming room, and on the outside you also have an area of socialization that has a fire pit and seating. Also, we could have done with a bigger population size. Really, we didn't talk to too many people, and also, as stated, this is only the lunch crowd that we talk to. And throughout the day, there are many more people who come through. Probably most of the campus goes through the Student Center at one point during the day. So really, we've only scratched the surface. In addition, we also have to remember that there are people who work here that are not students, like the hive workers and the custodials and the custodial workers. So really we could get their perspective on the behavior of the students and also on their own unique cultural lives here in the ASC Student Center. So really, this whole thing comes together as just part of the Student Center. But the real Student Center is the friends we made along the way.
And perhaps he's right. Throughout this whole presentation, we've seen how the ASC Commons serves as more than just a space. It's the people. And that is really the essence of LeTourneau University. At its core, LeTourneau University is a Christian school dedicated to helping people. Maybe in the end, LeTourneau really is the friends we make along the way.